Hello and welcome to another Tri-tutors video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at some important quotations according to theme and character for George Orwell's novel 1984. So I would definitely suggest that you go ahead and watch my video on how to select quotes to study to incorporate into your essays and also how to integrate quotations, but just a couple of notes over here when you are creating your quotes list, studying your quotes and integrating them into your sentences. Remember to study quotes that are versatile, that can apply to a variety of themes and characters, so that way you are prepared for any exam question that can be thrown at you. Make sure your quotes are distinctive and that they are easy to integrate into sentences. As I said, please have a watch of that video on how to integrate quotes so that you are better equipped to select the quotes that you want to study and also use them effectively in your writing. So in this video, we're going to be going through some major themes of 1984 and some major characters and discuss a few key quotations that you can use to prove these different themes and characters. Please note that there are a variety of amazing quotes to use in this novel. It's one of my favorite novels, and there are so many quotes that you can use. These are just a couple that could assist you, but please feel free to read more widely and to incorporate some other quotations. So our first theme is totalitarianism, control, and surveillance, a really key theme in 1984 within the dystopian genre sort of altogether. So we have Big Brother is watching you. The telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously. A single flicker of the eyes could give you away. Nothing is efficient in Oceania except the thought police. We shall squeeze you empty and then we shall fill you with ourselves. So the first one, Big Brother is watching you, that's just such an easy one to remember, and it's something that is repeated throughout the novel, really giving us an insight into the level of surveillance that the citizens of Oceania are under, but also the level of propaganda that is around in order to assert and maintain the party's regime and control over the society. Remember, a totalitarian government is one with a centralized dictatorship system, and so propaganda is absolutely critical to the maintaining of that control and the maintaining of that centralized dominance. The telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously, so this is a really important one to prove any form of surveillance and control. Firstly, the fact that it transmits, that it actually is constantly on and constantly generating and showcasing propaganda to the people. That's important in terms of maintaining control because they are constantly being fed information directly from the government, so they're listening only and all the time to what the government is trying to tell them. And then also the fact that it receives information, that it's observing all of its citizens at any point in time, even when Winston thinks he's not being observed by the telescreen. We find out towards the end of the novel that he actually has been. But there are telescreens everywhere, even when people can't see them or they think that they are out of sight of them. So they are gathering that information, and so the government and the thought police have full control. A single flicker of the eyes could give you away. So in a totalitarian or dystopian society, typically individualism is seen as something that's negative, seen as something that needs to be quashed. Individualism cannot work in a society where there has been or where there needs to be so much control in order to maintain power. And so even a single flicker of your eyes could give you away if you're thinking slightly differently, if you are just even having a glimmer of a thought, that could be really dangerous in the society. So like Winston, for instance, he thinks he's doing a good job at hiding all of his thoughts that go against the government and go against the party. We find out later that it's very evident to them that that he has been thinking against the party for a long time, but he is trying to sort of keep focus and trying to make his appearance. He tried to make himself appear as though he is part of the uniform army of citizens working in the outer party, but in reality, he is thinking these things that go against the party. Nothing is efficient in Oceania except the thought police. So a thought police, really quite a scary concept to think about, but a police force that is intended to police people's thoughts. So it's not just about your actions in the society, and if you act against the party, you'll be prosecuted, but even if you start to think against the party, this is problematic for them. And nothing is efficient in the society because the society is not really trying to, uplift its individuals or uplift its citizens. It's trying to maintain power and maintain dominance and control the whole time. So the only thing that's going to be efficient are the things that are important in order to maintain that control. We shall squeeze you empty, and then we shall fill you with ourselves. So this once again points to the idea of individuality, or the lack of individuality, or the prohibition of individuality in the society. O'Brien says this to Winston, saying that his individuality is absolutely meaningless. They're going to get rid of what makes him Winston, what makes him different, and they are going to fill him with all this indoctrination and all the things that are going to, all the propaganda that's going to make sure that he is a loyal soldier in the party's regime. Next, we have the manipulation of truth and history. The past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, the lie became truth. Who controls the past ran the party slogan, controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. Drop them into the memory hole to be devoured by the flames. The past never had been altered. The mutability of the past is the central tenet of INGSOC. So one of the ways in which the party maintains its control is through the manipulation of truth and history. And Winston actually works at the Ministry of Truth, which is a very paradoxical, ironic name for this ministry, because essentially what their job is to manipulate the truth and is to change the truth. So ultimately, it's not really the truth after it's been adjusted and made, fictionalized. And so in his job, what he has to do is he gets these instructions, which are really sort of coded messages. They don't actually ever say that you want to change the truth, that they sort of hint at edits that just need to be made. And he has to go back in sort of history books and adjust different things that have been said by Big Brother or that have been claimed, which now in the present are seen to be inaccurate. He needs to change them so that they match with what's actually happening in the present, so that Big Brother has never said anything wrong, and the past links to the present government's version of themselves. And remember, we have that whole shifting alliances with Eurasia and East Asia. So that constantly has to be readjusted and shifted, because then the enemies become allies, and then vice versa. So the past is something that is mutatable. It is something that is amendable. It is something that can be changed. And no one takes note, or no one is allowed to really consider the fact that the past is erased. We know that Winston's life before the party came into being, he remembers little glimmers of it, but ultimately no one is allowed to remember that stuff or utter it, and therefore that past is erased. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. So this one's a little bit tricky to get your head around at first, but it actually makes a lot of sense. The idea is whoever is in control at the moment controls how history is read and controls how the future shall be. So if the present government or the present party in 1984, they are fixing the history books, they are sort of editing the past, and therefore they are going to have a much stronger hold on the present and on the future. All the instructions that Winston gets, he drops them down the memory hole to be devoured by the flames. So there's the destruction, and therefore the past never had been altered. There's no idea or that people have been sort of quashed or indoctrinated to believe that the past has never actually been changed, and that this is what it is, and this is what the truth is. So the society or the party has basically doctored what like the definition of truth itself. The mutability of the past is a central tenet of INGSOC. So INGSOC is the ideology behind this society, the ideology behind Oceania and the party's regime. And the mutability of the past, the ability to change the past and alter it, is absolutely critical to its survival, to the society's survival, and to the party's dominance. The next theme we have is language. It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words. We're destroying words, scores of them, hundreds of them every day. We're cutting the language down to the bone. Freedom is slavery. Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. So in the Society of Oceania, they have adjusted the language of English to become Newspeak. And so they recreated, they're reinventing the language. And the reasoning behind this is that they want to destroy a bunch of words, because by destroying words, you are taking away concepts, right? The idea is that if they can take away like the word, eventually their sort of goal is to maybe take away the word freedom perhaps, and then that concept theoretically wouldn't exist, because words have a lot of power, because they give meaning to, or they give a definition to certain concepts, right? And so it's once again, language is used to manipulate, it's used for propaganda, but also the diminishing nature of language in the society, the fact that they're trying to limit how many words there are in the dictionary, limit how people speak, that is an incredibly, this is a move that's very politically motivated to try and make sure that people are only speaking according to what the party wants them to speak. Freedom is slavery. This talks to the paradoxical nature of this society, and one of the key examples of doublethink is the party's slogan, which is war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. So, as it says here in this quote, so doublethink is being able to think two completely contradictory ideas at the same time. So, understanding that war is peace in this society, that's supposed to make sense to them. And these people are indoctrinated to believe that that is something that can be true, even though we know that does not make any sense at all. War cannot be peace, they are polar opposites. In this society, polar opposites can be believed. And that shows you the power of language and the power of the party, in that they can manipulate people so much that the very sort of foundations of language can be altered and can be changed in people's minds. Isolation and dehumanization. Today there was fear, hatred, and pain, but no dignity of emotion, no deep or complex sorrows. No emotion was pure because everything was mixed up with fear and hatred. The family had become, in effect, an extension of the thought police. A taste for solitude, even to go for a walk by yourself, was always slightly dangerous. There was a word for it in Newspeak, own life, it was called, meaning individualism and eccentricity. So in these first two quotations, Winston here is thinking and reflecting on how things used to be. He doesn't have a very clear memory of how things used to be before Big Brother and the party took over. But he does realize that there's a superficiality to the emotions that are being experienced under the party's rulership. So yes, there are these negative emotions like fear, hatred, and pain, but it's not really deep. It's not as hectic or as deep as it was, these same emotions of fear, hatred, and pain in the past. Because in the past, there were family connections, there was this community of people, and there were real connections not only to oneself but to others, and there was a humanity. And in the society, there has, in the new society, in the party's version of society, people have become less human, so they don't feel as deeply, because in the society there's a focus on uniformity, not on individuality. They sort of don't, they look down on connections between people and relationships, because that's seen as taking away the focus from the person's relationship to the party, and the fact they should be focusing all their emotions on the party and making sure that that's the most important connection in their lives. And so we see here that Winston, he feels quite isolated in having these thoughts, because he can't actually even share these thoughts with anyone. Even having the thoughts themselves is criminal. But also he is dehumanized, and the society is dehumanized, both outer party members and inner party members, because they have no access to these innate emotions which make us human. The family had become, in effect, an extension of the thought police, so that's a pretty scary thought. But family has completely, it's sort of, this concept has been dehumanized, because your family is also, they're spying on you, right? Your family or children report their parents in the society for going against the society in some way, or saying a comment that goes against the party. And so the very understanding, or our understanding and definition of family, has been corrupted. And then we have over here, like, this danger of individuality in the society is called own life, and is something that is to be looked down on and something to actually be feared, because in the society, as much as they don't like individuality, they want people to come together, but not necessarily to build real connections, but to focus their attention on the party, and to make sure their connection to the party is fulfilling, and that it is central to their lives. And so being by yourself and having your own thoughts, well, that can be dangerous for the party's maintaining of their control. Resistance and rebellion. If there was hope, it must lie in the proles. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. To die hating them, that was freedom. They can make you say anything, but they can't make you believe it. So Winston truly believes that hope and freedom lie with the proles. One of the party's slogans is that animals and proles are free, and this is something to be sort of looked down on. Freedom as a concept, according to the party and according to the propaganda and indoctrination, is something that is not really a good thing at all. But over here, Winston, as a member of the outer party, he sees the proles, the proletariat, as having the capacity to rise up and change things. And so throughout the novel, he keeps pointing to them as the only inspiration, or only form of hope that the society has. Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 make 4. This is also something that is continually repeated. Winston's idea that freedom is to say something that is fundamentally true. And isn't that scary, that freedom is something that's looked down on, and it's something that Winston thinks is actually just associated with saying the truth, which is, sort of the bare minimum of freedom. To die hating them, that was freedom. So this is Winston's sort of idea of how he can rebel and how he can resist. And he thinks that it's enough just to have it in his head. He also thinks that they can make you say anything, but they can't make you believe it. And this is proven untrue. It's proven false at the end, because when he's being tortured by O'Brien in the Ministry of Love, and he has finally come to the point where he will obey Big Brother, and he will say he has given up on that. He sort of when he gives up and gives in to O'Brien's torture, and he decides he's going to actually start saying that Big Brother is good, and then O'Brien says, no, you're not actually done yet, because it's not enough just to say it. We have to make you believe it properly before you can actually be done with this torture, and before you can walk out as a reformed member of the society. And so this is something that Winston says earlier on. He thinks that they can make you say anything, but they can't make you believe it. But by the end, what's so tragic about Winston's journey is, by the end, he's a shell of a man, and he believes in Big Brother. And that final line of the book, that Winston loved Big Brother, encompasses that journey, that very tragic journey. Love, loyalty, and betrayal. If you loved someone, you loved him, and when you had nothing else to give, you still gave him love. Do it to Julia, not me. You must love Big Brother. It is not enough to obey him. You must love him. The one thing that matters is that we shouldn't betray one another. So this first quote is Winston's reflection on what love means, but at a time before the party came to power. And so here it's talking about unconditional love. So this is when he's having the memory of his mother and his sister, and this idea that love is unconditional, that you love someone through everything. And in this society, the only love that is fostered is between people and the party. There shouldn't be this love between people. That's not something that is helpful to the party and what it's all about. And something as strong as love can only be countered with something like really strong, like hate. And both of these emotions are reserved for the party, because there's a love towards the party and a hate towards the brotherhood or to any perceived enemy of the party. Do it to Julia, not me. This is a really pertinent line towards the end of the novel, where Winston is going to be tortured in room 101, and he finally gives up the last strand of his humanity by saying that they should rather torture Julia instead of him. And this is so important because, like I said, it's the last element of his humanity, the fact that he is betraying someone who he promised never to betray, someone who he had this real connection with. And so after this moment, after this form of torture, after all this torture to get to this moment, Winston finally leaves the Ministry of Love as a completely reformed person who totally loves Big Brother. So his love and his loyalty has been transferred from, having this sort of individual need for freedom or individual desire to have thought, and also his relationship with Julia and that sort of physical desire, and that has been replaced with a pure love and loyalty for Big Brother and the party. Like I said in the previous slide, this is the quote over here that O'Brien says to him, that he's not going to stop the torture. You must love Big Brother, but it's not enough to obey him. You must properly love him. You must properly be sort of indoctrinated into the belief that you do love Big Brother, and you believe everything that is given to you by the party. The one thing that matters is that we shouldn't betray one another. It happens in a conversation with Winston and Julia, where they agree that they shouldn't betray one another, as we saw from this quote earlier. I'm not sure why I haven't put this in chronological order, apologies, but this doesn't actually work out because Winston does betray Julia, just as Julia betrays him. Winston Smith. To mark the paper was the decisive act. I hate purity, I hate goodness. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother. So the first chapter starts off with Winston's act of defiance, his first physical act of defiance. He's had a lot of defiant thoughts, but that is to actually write in his diary. And that's when he writes that he thinks the year is 1984, although he can't properly check. And this is where we see that Winston is sort of going on this journey now, at the start of this journey, where he is going to be flirting with the rules, or with breaking the rules. And he thinks he gets away with it for quite a bit of the story, but it lands up that he doesn't. And he says that actually writing a diary is a decisive act. And just thinking about how writing in a diary seems to be something that's really trivial, right? There's something quite normal, but in this society, this is a decisive act of rebellion. I hate purity, I hate goodness. He says this when he's talking to Julia, and this is another way of him trying to resist the party, trying to resist all the propaganda, and trying to live a different life. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother. This is the final two sentences of the novel, and this shows the way that the story ends for Winston, that he becomes a sort of soldier, or not a soldier, but rather a person who embodies all the ideas of the party and is just following Big Brother blindly, and listens and absorbs all the propaganda. And so this idea that he's won the victory over himself brings into focus that theme of individuality versus uniformity. And it shows us how in this society, to get victory over yourself means to get rid of all your individual desires, whether they be physical desires, whether they be mental desires, whether it be a desire for freedom or a desire for free thought or anything like that. In this society, it means to get a victory over that, to get rid of that, and to rather just embrace the tenets of Ingsoc and to embrace Big Brother wholeheartedly. Julia. Any kind of organized revolt against the party, which was bound to be a failure, struck her as stupid. The clever thing was to break the rules and stay alive. Their embrace had been a battle, the climax of victory. It was a blow struck against the party. It was a political act. So what's interesting about Winston and Julia, they both want to break the rules and they both want to go against the party, but they have very different motivations for doing it. Winston's motivations, he is trying to go against the party. He is interested in the ideology behind the party and the sort of academics around it. So he's fascinated by the Brotherhood, about the book that he gets given by O'Brien, who's under the guise of being a part of the Brotherhood. And he's interested in that whole debate about what freedom truly is, and about thoughts. Whereas Julia is just, she's just trying to break the rules. She thinks that any form of revolt against the party is quite silly because it's never, any sort of organized revolt is never actually going to be successful. And she rather just wants to break the rules while she can and stay alive. So it's not something that's ideologically centered for her. And it's interesting because it is discussed that Winston is older than Julia, and so perhaps this has something to do with the fact that Winston does remember a time, although very vaguely, of before the party came in and was so influential, whereas Julia maybe not remember such a time, right? Maybe she was born, or she remembers only a time when the party was a part of her life and a part of the society, and so therefore she does not see an alternative to it. She just sees it, okay, she wants to break some of the rules given to her desires, but she doesn't see it as a form of a plan to resist the party in some ideological way. And then, importantly, Winston and Julia's relationship is not something that's just about their sort of physical desire, but that physical desire is representative of this political act. The fact that they have this connection, they have this love for each other, this is in contrast to the to what the society and to what the party perpetuates, because the party wants there only to be a relationship between its people and the party. They want a complete 100% love between the people and the party, and they shouldn't be engaging in sort of connections with other people because that's dangerous for the party's power and it challenges their centrality. And so the fact that Julia and Winston have this relationship, it's something that is political. It's something of a act of resistance that is incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous to the party in its effort to keep people controlled and limited. O'Brien, we do not merely destroy our enemies, we change them. You are a flaw in the pattern. You do not exist. You must love Big Brother. So O'Brien says this line when he is torturing Winston in the Ministry of Love. And it's a really, it's a really important quote because it shows us what this party is all about. And they don't merely destroy their enemies, we change them. And so what he's saying here is he takes Winston completely down to nothing and rebuilds him just with the party's propaganda. You are a flaw in the pattern, so this speaks to that rejection of individuality in this dystopian world. The fact that Winston is someone that is a flaw because he has individual thoughts, and the party wants to make sure that everyone follows in a line and everyone's uniform and everyone's fitting the pattern. So Winston needs to be dealt with because he does not fit the pattern. You do not exist. This is such a powerful line, and honestly, that chapter where O'Brien is speaking to Winston about, existence and things like that and the party's control is such an important chapter. I would definitely sort of reread that before going into an exam because it's all about the level of control that the party has. And that's what's sort of really scary about this novel. And this particular line is questioning Winston's entire existence because O'Brien claims that the party controls everything, and so they control the laws of nature. Even the 19th century laws of nature, he says, don't exist anymore. And so he says to Winston that if the party says you don't exist, then you don't exist. So we can see this party is really incredibly powerful, and their control is unmitigated and unmatched. And so even Winston's existence, which we know to be true, they indoctrinate people to believe the truth is different to what it really is. You must love Big Brother. That's that quote that keeps getting repeated now. But this idea that you mustn't just follow Big Brother, but you need to fully idolize Big Brother and what Big Brother represents. And next we have Big Brother or the party, because Big Brother is essentially a symbol of the party. So we have that slogan: war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. The Ministry of Peace concerns itself with war, the Ministry of Truth with lies, the Ministry of Love with torture, and the Ministry of Plenty with starvation. Collectively, the party owns everything in Oceania because it controls everything and disposes of the products as it thinks fit. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else, not in the individual mind, which can make mistakes, and in any case soon perishes, only in the mind of the party, which is collective and immortal. Whatever the party holds to be the truth is truth. So we have the first two quotations over here, which show paradox, which show the existence of doublethink in this world. Not just the existence of doublethink, but the essential nature of doublethink in this world, of people being able to think contradictory thoughts, the manipulation of truth itself. And that's how the party continues its power. So collectively, the party owns everything because it controls everything and can dispose of everything as it sees fit. So the party is the ultimate form of superiority in the society, and the party controls absolutely everyone. What's interesting is that the proles are actually free from a lot of what the party is saying, and as much as the party looks down on the party members, look down on the proles, they are actually the ones, as Winston claims, who actually retain their humanity because they are not governed by the party in the same way as the inner party and outer party members are. They are not controlled to such an extent, so they actually retain their humanity, which is incredibly ironic. And then we have this last quotation, which is quite long, but it points to what we said previously about that you do not exist quote that O'Brien says to Winston. But reality is something that is subjective, according to the party. And the party, their whole idea is that only what they say is objectively true. That anything that is subjective, so anything that people think or people consider or any person's own thoughts, that's something that's not true. That only the party has objective control and objective access to the truth. And what's incredibly scary about the party is that it's a collective and it's immortal. So even though you have Big Brother as this symbol of the party, it's not really clear, and it's sort of implied that maybe Big Brother doesn't really exist, right? That the party is this collective, and as this organization, it is actually immortal. It's something that can last forever because it's not just based on a human mind, which can perish really easily. And in this society, the party can just take an individual and make sure that they don't exist anymore. They can just vaporize them. So the party, as this collective organization, is immortal. And so whatever the party holds to be the truth is the truth because they have the ultimate power and dominance in this dystopian world. Thank you for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful. There are so many more quotations and so many more important themes and ideas with 1984, but hopefully you have a little bit of a summary now to work with as you compile your quotes list. Please remember to like the video and to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.